Hello everybody, welcome to the Mayor and I. I won't tell you which edition, it's one of the many Mayor and I editions.
We've lost track.
We've lost track. I've just spent 10 minutes trying to adjust my shirt so I don't look like I've got a big belly. If we could it's a conversation between myself and Nick Buckley, MBE, who is the mayoral candidate for Greater Manchester. And just on that, the election is on the 2nd of May, which is around 3 to 4 weeks ago. And in these podcasts, Nick and I talk about current events. I tend to come up with a list that Nick doesn't really have much time to review, and we get Nick's views on these things, and I give my views as well on some of them as well. So welcome everybody, and we'll begin as always at the beginning. So welcome Nick.
Thank you.
Nice to see you again.
And you.
So I just on this week, I thought it'd be nice to have a theme.
Yeah.
So I know you're a massive fan of James Bond. I don't know actually. I'm just guessing.
I loved all the old stuff. The new stuff doesn't do anything for me.
I quite like Daniel Craig. So there were quite a few topics I read about this week, and as I read about them, they seemed to fit into for some reason to Bond novel titles, basically. So without any further ado, I'll begin on something that's had quite a lot of publicity this week and last week as well. And the name of the Bond book that I'm going to talk about is Live and Let Die,
Yeah.
which I'm sure is one of your favourites. And this is about death, and it's about assisted dying, which has been in the news a lot in the past couple of weeks. We understand that Keir Starmer is going to bring a vote in on this if Labour win the next election. And we also know that Keir Starmer has in the past voted for euthanasia, as I understand it. And I really wanted to talk to you about your views on that. I know you and I have very differing views on certain things, such as capital punishment, abortion and other things like that. But I don't know your views on this, and I was interested to hear about it. But what I'd like to do first is just maybe give some background on this, about a case that really upset me, that I read about probably 6 months ago, and it really did distress me. And I think the day I read it, I couldn't actually sleep when I went to bed because I felt so distressed about this particular story. And it relates to a Belgian woman called Shanti de Courty, and she was a young woman, probably about 19 or
she was 17.
She was 17,
yeah.
So you maybe she was 17 at the time of the incident. So Shanti de Courty was a 17-year-old young Belgian, everything to live for, and she was present at a terrorist attack. You might have to correct me here because you may know more than I do. In Belgium by Islamic fundamentalists or Islamic terrorists, where they murdered in this attack several of her friends. It was a school party that was out. She was in the school party and several of her friends were murdered. She escaped unscathed, but as a result of this attack, she became more and more distressed mentally, felt life wasn't worth living, got more and more distressed. And Belgian law, if the parents consent, allows euthanasia relating to levels of mental distress. So this I'll bring a long story very short. Ultimately, she asked to be euthanized, to be killed by whatever it is, lethal injection or whatever. Her parents consented, and it happened. And so she was basically put to death in Belgium, because Belgian law, which has embraced euthanasia and assisted dying, allows that to happen. And when I read that story, I was very distressed that a young woman of 17 years old, 17 years of age, as a result of something that had nothing to do with her, that she was a victim of, was ended up allowed to be killed. Whereas the people who actually carried out the attack are still alive, still in jail, living lives anyway.
And it's illegal to kill them.
There's no death penalty in Belgium. So they're alive, they're living a life of some sort in jail. She, who was a victim of this, as a result of the law in Belgium, has ended up dying. And we now know that this is now happening in Canada, and there's several countries around the world now where this assisted dying is happening. So the first thing I'd like to ask is, what are your views on this? And then I'll come back to a second point, which I think is really important, after you've told me what you think.
So like all these examples, it's extremely complicated. There is no simple answer. If you ask me, should an adult be able to decide if they live or die, then my gut reaction is, well, we're a free person in a free country. We should have the right to end our life if we're that unhappy. But then on the flip side to that, we have to look at, well, most of it will be mental health. So why are we allowing someone to make such a decision when the issue is their hers was poor mental health.
Yeah.
She wasn't injured in this attack. What she saw damaged her, and she wanted to end her suffering. So I really don't know. I think my worry for this is not the sane individual who decides they want to end their life, or the person with terminal cancer who's going through hell and he's just waiting to die. That's not the problem. My problem is what comes after this. If we give the state and other people, family members, power and influence over us to persuade us to end our life, that's a dark, slippery road. How many children of 80-year-olds will be saying to them, Mum, Dad, you're a hindrance to me now, Mum. You're affecting my life, you're affecting our grandchildren's lives and our great-grandchildren's lives because you're nothing but an issue now. And the money you've got could be spent better once you're... So the pressure you can put on people to end their life would be considerable. So where would the safeguarding be involved with this? Now, I'm also realising as I'm talking that I'm also a hypocrite, because I'm quite happy for the state to execute criminals, certain criminals. My argument for that would be they've broken the law. They've crossed the line that a decent society should not tolerate. Now, as I'm saying it, the hypocrisy is just pouring out of my mouth here. So it's one of those situations that's really hard to A, understand, B, to look into the future about how it will be used. And then you can tie abortion into this as well. In this country now, we execute babies in the womb who are innocent, who haven't damaged anybody or committed a crime. So we're doing that state execution as well. This is a big mess. I would need several weeks, several months pondering this and thinking about it and researching it and reading about it before I would put a stamp of this is what I think and I believe.
And I think you're right. These issues, and you're right, you are a hypocrite, because on the one hand you're happy for people to be put to death if they have committed a crime, or if actually we were certain they had committed that crime, which, because that's happened before as well. On the other hand, you are very pro-life in terms of abortion, and in this situation you're not quite sure, so you're crossing a number of lines there. I think the hypocrisy for me, and just coming back to the point we were talking about, what I'm really annoyed about again with this and the fact that Labour are supporting it, and Keir Starmer and lots of what we call the progressives are supporting this as well, is where the hell were they when COVID was happening and lockdowns were happening and they were talking about let's save Granny's life? Because this is the complete opposite of this, isn't it? This is let's not save Granny's life, let's put Granny to death because she's a burden on society basically, or a burden on her family or whatever. So these people who are so obsessed with putting us into lockdown, curtailing our lives, curtailing children's school lives, all the damage that did to society on the basis that they were saving Granny's life, are now quite happy to put Granny and Grandad to death as a result of this legislation. So your hypocrisy is mild, their hypocrisy stinks to me. The same people who supported the lockdowns and that horrific time we went through are just as breezily now supporting the euthanasia side of things. I also think you're correct. It's about nothing exists in a vacuum, does it? So the idea of assisted dying occurring in the correct way, in the correct manner, sounds fine. The reality is it's never that simple, because people have agendas, don't they? And certainly around old people and money and inheritances, that's a massive issue for people. So the idea that it could be abused, I think, is really very, very clear for all sorts of reasons.
The fact it can be abused is 100%.
Yes.
Because humans will abuse anything we can to a certain extent. Laws, we push the limits. We have sports cheats. We have people who commit fraud. We have people who break the law. So some humans will misuse this act if we had it for that. Another thing, there's two other things. First of all, we'd have to look at doctors. Doctors have the Hippocratic Oath, which says, do no harm. That breaks the Hippocratic Oath straight away. How can you euthanize somebody? Same with abortion. How can you kill somebody in the womb and say, done no harm? So we're messing with what doctors should be doing. And the other thing is, who deems who's worthless or useful in society? Because my list will be different from your list. Our list will be different from Keir Starmer's list. Their list will be different from whoever's in charge of the country in 20 years from now. So we need to be careful that we don't set a precedent that other people can start deeming other humans less valuable, because we know where that ends.
Yes.
Because we've been here before with the Holocaust in Germany, with Rwanda, with lots of things. Once you can start actually pointing to people going, they're worth less than me, then you dehumanize them and you make them not human, and humans kill animals very easily. And once we say, you're not human, or you're not as much of a human as me, this will go down a very dark path. Yeah.
And once again, it's about the over-legislation of society and life, isn't it? Because you made the point, you believe in freedom and people have the right to kill themselves. I know they don't technically, it's illegal, but actually there's a big difference in somebody committing suicide, as they choose to do whatever they might, versus an actual formal process where the killing of somebody is a legal right, if you like. I think that's the difference between the suicide thing, because if somebody wants to kill themselves, they're going to kill themselves at the end of the day. They have the ability to do that. But that's...
Most people fail committing suicide. Seriously, attempted suicide to actually killing yourself is something like 7 or 8 to 1.
Really? Is that because the people who are attempting don't really want to do it?
Some people will be crying out for help.
Yeah.
Other people just be incompetent. Other people may change their mind. Other people don't realise how tough we are trying to kill yourself. There's many reasons. But something like only 16% of all suicide attempts end in death.
Really? I didn't know that statistic, thank you. So just to finish that then, how would you vote at this moment in time? If that was a vote you had to...
I'd vote no.
Vote no?
Not because I don't think we should, under certain circumstances with certain people. It's because we would need to have this discussion for many years in society. And this isn't one... Most things you can make a law about and you can change things very quickly if you wanted to. And it might go wrong, but then you can correct it. This is one of those things as a society we would need to think about and talk about for years before we make a decision on this.
Very good. Okay, so that was Live and Let Die.
Yeah.
The first of our Bond-themed messages. The second one is Goldfinger. So... any ideas what that could be about? I suspect you've read this, so...
There's a dirty joke in there somewhere with Goldfinger.
This is about... and I'm saying Goldfinger because this is about Trump, Donald Trump. And he's kind of golden, isn't he? He's a golden man. He's got a golden toilet, a golden... what's it called? The elevator. He came down the golden elevator when he announced he was running... first time Prime Minister, President. Escalator. And he's kind of he is actually golden, physically golden as well.
Yes.
His colour's golden. So, and the reason I've called it Goldfinger is Goldfinger was this character in Bond who basically was obsessed with gold, surrounded by gold, and Trump is like that. But also I'm calling it Goldfinger because it seems that anything he puts his touch to does turn to gold. So the story in the paper last week was he set up a social network called Truth Social, which is basically Twitter. It's Twitter, but it was Twitter before Musk.
He got kicked off Twitter, so he set up his own version of Twitter.
In many ways, your lives are parallel. Your life is similar to Donald Trump. He got kicked off Twitter, as all the best people are, Nick. And he set up Truth Social, which doesn't have that many people on it at the moment. I think a few million, I'm not sure.
It has. It's extremely American orientated.
Right.
So it has, tens, if not hundreds of millions of people in America on it.
Right.
But hardly anybody in the UK.
Right.
So when it first came out, I joined, and I could not get over 54 followers.
Really?
And I spent 6 months on it.
Yeah. Is that because most of the people are in America?
No Americans. Who cares about this English guy in Manchester trying to run for mayor? So I ended up deleting it. But I believe it's very big in America.
Yeah.
And all the Trump supporters are on it because he's the main man on Truth Social.
So probably most Republicans are on Truth Social. But anyway, he floated it on the New York Stock Exchange, and it floated at, believe it or not, $5.5 billion value. So why I think this is really interesting is not celebrating Trump making another 5.5 billion. And by the way, he hasn't, because I think there's certain restrictions about when he can crystallise his shares and things.
And he only owns 60%.
He only owns 60% of it, which is still a substantial amount. But it just happened at the time that he needed $400 million as a bail bond relating to this. Is it a case in New York? I think it is.
Some civil case.
Yes, some civil case in New York. And I just thought, when I read it, I thought, you just can't keep this guy down, can you? Even when he's under that much pressure, having to find $500 million, suddenly he manages to make another $5.5 billion to help him support that. And in fact, the $400 million he had to find was reduced to $170 million or something as well, so which is peanuts to somebody like him as well. And I just thought when I read this, is this what's going to happen? He's just going to keep going and he's just going to win the presidency. Where are you on that now? Because I think last time we spoke on this, you weren't sure where he was going to be in the presidential election, or maybe you were.
I'm pretty sure he's going to win. I don't know if he's got it yet, but it looks like he's going to get the nomination, Republican nomination, and it looks like Biden is going to stand again. Trump has to win, and I think the reason why Truth Social has done so well is because the people who are buying it or floating, they all want Trump to win. So half the population of America actually want him to win and will do anything to keep him in the race. So I'm not too sure he's got the golden finger, because several of his businesses have gone bust in the past and stuff like that, which, nothing wrong in that. That's what happens to business people. You take chances, you buy. Not everything works. No one's that clever where everything they do works. But I think the success of Truth Social is a validation of him, his policies, and what he wants to do. So I don't think the people would allow it to fail. That's why it's done so well. So
you think its success it's the other way around, rather than it being successful because he's successful and things it's being successful because the people want him to win the election, so they have then invested in the actual stock as a result of that. Because I like to think the Americans have a real sense of, I don't know anymore, I have made these sweeping statements about countries. I like to think they have a sense of fair play and free speech in America, and I think the reason he is ahead of Biden in the polls now is because people are seeing what the Democrats are doing to him in terms of these legal cases, these massive, ridiculous bail figures.
That's still working, actually.
And I think they just think it's unfair. I think they think he's being treated badly, unfairly. They think it's an abuse of legislation, and they are reacting to that. I think that's what's happening. Yeah.
I think most decent, middle-of-the-road people think that. So he could commit a horrendous crime and his base would still vote for him. he could turn out to be a literal saint, and the other half of the country, the Democrats, would hate him anyway and think he's the Antichrist. It's that slim bit in the middle.
Correct.
They're the bits that you have to in any general election. You've got to persuade the middle bit. You've already got your two ends will always vote for what they want to vote for, and I think that sense of fair play plays on them, because they're looking at the man, the way he's being treated, and they're going, that's not fair. And I think all Western countries think that. Western people have all got a sense of fair play, and they can tell when someone's being treated unfairly, and also when you seem to be the David to the Goliath, where you're sticking up for the small people.
Yeah.
So
and he's a bizarre David, isn't he? Because he's a David who is really a Goliath as well, isn't he? I mean, he's far more powerful and successful and wealthy than any of his Democratic opponents. But
he speaks more like a normal person.
Yeah.
As in crude, little bit vulgar, no P's and Q's.
Yeah.
Take it or leave it, in your face. I'm not bothered.
Yeah.
He's not a polished politician.
Yeah.
That's why he did so well to begin with.
Yeah.
And now he seems. I'm not saying he is. He seems to be always fighting for the small people.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a strange character, isn't he? But I was thrilled when I saw it, because I felt he'd been treated so badly in that legal case, and that $400 million he had to find. I thought it was outrageous.
Well, he would have won the last election if it wasn't for two things. If it wasn't for COVID, and it wasn't for shutting down the story about Biden's son.
Oh, right.
If it wasn't for COVID ruining the economy, when he picked it all up, that damaged him. And then Biden's son, who is on video with prostitutes sniffing cocaine and doing all these and multi-billion-pound deals and backhanders to his dad. But the FBI all said, this is Russian propaganda, none of it's true, so we're not telling anybody.
Yeah.
People who mentioned it online got their accounts frozen.
Yes.
And this was all a couple of weeks before the election. It turns out it's all true.
All true, yeah. This is all true. Yeah. And that is reminiscent to me of, we're going to move on to a certain Russian in a minute, but what's been happening in America, in my view, is similar to what's happened in third world countries, where we're seeing elections rigged, we're seeing opponents either jailed or legislated out of the opposition. I think it's just happened. I can't remember. I think it might have been in Venezuela recently. There was an election, and the main opponent, an 80-year-old woman, I can't remember her name, was actually wasn't able to register, because the computer to register, as you're doing now with your mayoral, didn't allow her to register the day before the election, so she couldn't actually stand. So what we're seeing in America at the moment, to me, is reminiscent of these third world countries, where they're not what they call banana republics, where basically the opposition is stifled by illegal means. Basically, I think that's what's happening in America.
I would say to a certain extent there's always been corruption in most elections at a certain level. I think it feels like the corruption's increased, but because of social media we talk about it a lot more. Yeah.
Next, so that was Goldfinger. We'll now move to the other side of the world, From Russia with Love.
Yep.
And this is Putin. Two things with Putin that I'm interested in your views on. Firstly, his re-election, and I think most people say when they read about that, well, this is basically a totalitarian state. There's no opposition to the guy, but the actual voting percentage, and we know what was the guy called who died of it? It was Navalny. I think it was Navalny. His
Something
opposition.
like that, yeah.
His wife's been very on TV a lot. She's a very sort of striking blonde woman who's always, but basically he died in prison at the main opposition. But it was something like 88% voted for Putin to re-elect him. And I know the conventional view on this is, well, it's a totalitarian state. They have it's like North Korea. They have no choice but to vote for him. But I actually think the Russians do like Putin. I actually think they vote for him because they see him as somebody who is protecting their interests and thinking about them. Do you think that's the case? I mean, I don't know how much you know about Russia, but I'd be interested to.
I've been to Russia. I've been to Moscow.
Okay.
Many decades ago. What the mistake we make all the time in many different areas is we always presume the people in other countries are just like us, think like us, have the same values of us, would make the same choices of us if they had the opportunity to make those choices, and that's a false narrative. Western Europe's the same, but once you start getting to the Eastern Bloc and once you start getting to Russia, they're different people with different mindset, different history. They do appreciate strong leaders because they've had strong leaders in the past. They've had to have strong leaders because of their barbaric history, such as Nazi Germany invading and all those sorts of problems that they've had. The Vikings decimated parts of Russia, took them as slaves and stuff like that. So, we forget about these things. If you put someone in a dangerous situation and say you can have democracy in this dangerous situation, or you can have a tough man who will save you, we'll all vote for the tough man. So that's human nature. So I do think he's more popular than most people think he is, and I would imagine he's got less support in the big cities, which will be more westernised, more left wing.
More cosmopolitan.
Yeah, but once you get out of the cities, I think the average person in the countryside like him. The fact that there's a Cold War and a hot war at the moment involving Russia will make the populace there go, well, I'm a patriot. It's my country against the world. We're always being picked on. Look at NATO slowly approaching our borders over 30 years when they said they wouldn't come near us. We're scared of NATO because history tells us all these people eventually invade us. Napoleon, Hitler, all tell us we're not going to invade, we want peace with you, but they all break the promises and eventually invade us. So paranoia sets in there. And I would imagine as well, and he's been good at this, I'll tell you about a Christmas advertisement he put out. He's also very good at showing the population what it means to be Western. High crime, knife crime, high immigration, homosexuality, trans, not knowing what a man or a woman is, taking your children to hospitals to have their breasts removed and your vaginas made. And he's saying to his people, you want this? No Christianity, no God. I mean, they've got a strong church in Russia, the Orthodox Church in Russia. They've got a strong church. Is this what you want? You might want slightly more money, but this is the price you pay. And the West is, decadent and crumbling, and so he can point to something saying, do you want this? He did a Christmas advertisement. I don't think it was Christmas just gone, it must have been Christmas before. And it was the back of Santa, and he's in someone's house delivering presents.
Is this for his campaign, was it?
It must have been.
Oh, something,
And it just was a propaganda piece, I think. And Santa's going around this house in Russia, dropping presents off. And it's a Western house. And there's a picture with two mummies with their children. And there's a dildo on the side. There's all these things.
It's a lesbian.
It's a lesbian, yeah. And then he does a magic spell, and then he goes around the house again and starts delivering presents this time. And it's a mum and dad with their child. And it's a picture of Jesus on the wall instead of the rainbow flag. And right at the very end, you don't see Santa. Santa turns around, and it's Putin, and he goes, great piece of propaganda.
Yeah.
So
I think that would appeal to a lot of people in this country. Actually,
appealed to me. I went, fantastic. So the Russian people are not the same as us, and we're foolish to think we know how they think. We don't.
Yeah, it's interesting. But I wanted to talk today. This is a good lead into it. There's a program on Netflix called Three Body Problem. I don't know if you watch Netflix.
I've not heard it.
And it's science fiction. I love science fiction. And I started watching this thing, and I know something about the story because originally it was a Chinese story. But I started watching it, and I kept having to turn off because even though the story itself was good, you could see all the way through it exactly what you're talking about now. So the main characters who are scientists, there's not one white person at all. And this is set in England, by the way. Sorry, this is set in England. So the main characters are black, Asian, Indian, one of the main characters, protagonists, is an Asian woman going out with an Indian man. This is in England, in the middle of England. And then the main detective in it is Chinese. Yeah. So I'm thinking, right, okay. So I thought I'm going to push my way through this and just ignore this. I'm going to carry on with it. And next minute, the Chinese character, one of the Chinese characters, who's, to be fair, is that part, then meets somebody, a European. I thought, oh, last a European, to meet him in this hut. And she says to him, oh, are you, what are you doing here? He said, I'm saving lives. And she said, who are you saving? She said, what? And he said, why do you think it's who? It's birds. I'm saving birds. Birds have been wiped out by such and such. And then he went into this long lecture about how 1,000 species a year are being killed. And so I turned off at that point as well. So I'd already turned off about 3 times.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm going to go back and have another go at this. So I went back again. And then the Chinese detective in the UK was chatting with his son, who was playing on his station, like that. And then next minute, the Chinese son is talking to the Chinese father, and he said, and the father said, oh, where's Fred? I'm using a male name today, sort of thing. Where's that idiot Fred or something? And the son said, why don't you like him? And he said, oh, he's been my boyfriend for 2 years now. And I thought, oh no, here we go again. Even the Chinese son has got to be gay. And so, you go all the way through it, and you know, there's a good story in there, but you're bombarded with so many messages by the progressives about how life should be and what it should really be like, you know. And the one English character in there, who was quite a good actor or whatever, he ends up having cancer, of course, because you can't have a good white person who isn't ill in any. It's got to be. So I was laughing. I meant to discuss it with you because I just thought you just can't. Even now, just good stories. They're peppered with so much lecturing about the way we should be and the way it should be in life. It's unbearable.
Let me blow your mind.
Okay.
You remember Hill Street Blues?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
It ran from 1981 to 1987.
Yes.
How do I know? My wife found it yesterday on More 4 and went, oh, I'm going to watch all the series. I used to love this. So we watched a pilot episode yesterday. So the pilot episode aired in 1981. Partway through, the senior police officer talking, and one says to the other, well, you know the captain's son, he's struggling with his gender identity. And I went, he used the phrase gender identity, and this was 1981.
Oh my God, they were at it then.
And I was like, they were at it then. Just not as much in your face and not every 4 minutes. Yeah. So they mentioned it once in the whole episode. And it's not been, I think we watched 2 or 3 episodes now, and they've been mentioned again. But they actually said he's struggling with his gender identity. 1981.
Flipping it. I know, this is the thing, but I think the problem was then, I wasn't awake, certainly wasn't awake then or being aware to these things. So I think I used to watch all that stuff and not realise I was being sold a message. And we discussed this the other day, didn't we, about the Oscars, about the guy coming on naked. I think we did discuss it. So,
and it's how much. So if every one of their sons now's got gender identity problems, or every one of them's gay, it's the quantity of how much they're throwing at you.
Yes.
So I don't mind a story where someone's son's gay because certain people's sons
are
gay.
Yeah.
And, it makes the story. But when it's every 4 seconds there's another politically correct mantra in your face, then it just winds you.
But in that programme I just mentioned, there's not just one normal white family.
Yeah.
A man, his wife, and 3 heterosexual children. Yeah. It's like, that is just not allowed, is it, anymore? That's not, even though probably 80% of our population is like that, it's just not allowed anymore. Yeah. I just thought, I paid attention to that. So the second thing from Russia with Love about Putin, something horrific happened, which was there were 137 people killed at a concert in Moscow, but they were killed by ISIS extremists. And what I was interested in, what do you think will happen as a result of that? Because we've never really seen this level of atrocity, I think, in Russia before. I think there's always been a threat of it, but
they've had stuff like this before.
They've had stuff like this before, to this scale. Or?
Maybe not 137 dying, but I remember them slaughtering, gassing people to death in a theatre. There's been atrocities before because Russia spent so many years fighting the Chechen wars. They had 2 wars
and also
there.
in Afghanistan.
Yeah, and all of them are radical Muslims living there, so they've got a problem themselves with radical Islam, and they've been targeted before. There's rumours, was it the West? There's rumours that America was telling Putin, we're hearing chatter something's going to happen in Moscow, beware, but you wouldn't believe it. There's all sort of rumours going on now. Do I believe it's not do I believe. Who gains out of this? The only person who gains out of this attack, I would say, is probably Putin, because this has scared his populace even more.
Yeah.
So they want a strong man still
to
save him from the radical jihadists. I wouldn't know if he would ever do this himself. I'd die. Who knows what goes on through someone's mind. But I think it's been probably... It's been a benefit to him and his regime.
It'll certainly, I mean, if we were talking about his strongman image, it will certainly reinforce that in terms of the way we assume he's going to react. I'm kind of more interested in how do you think he's going to react?
He'll have to do something.
Yeah.
You're not a strong man if you can have 137 people killed in Moscow and don't do anything about it.
Yeah.
The question is, can he do anything about it? Because he's in Ukraine. Is this why they've attacked? Is this why they've committed this atrocity, thinking there's no way you can come back to Chechnya. There's no way you can come after us. You might as well send some assassins to kill 1 or 2 of us, but there's no army coming here. So maybe they've been emboldened that he's stuck in Ukraine.
Well, I think it's actually my understanding is these particular ISIS terrorists come from Afghanistan. That's what my understanding is, and also what's happened is that radical Islam has been emboldened by the Taliban recovering or taking control of, and these groups are springing up again. Basically, that's what my understanding is. So I think it wouldn't be Chechnya; it would be Afghanistan. He would have to go after. Yeah. But then, and there's a history there between Russia. And
I don't think he'd invade because they couldn't.
Yeah.
No one's ever invaded Afghanistan and won.
Correct.
You know, Alexander the Great didn't even go into it; he ignored it.
Yeah.
British Empire several times couldn't control it, and now the Americans and the British went in. We left after 20 years, tail between our legs, and it all collapsed in 3 hours.
Yeah.
So he wouldn't go in again. But I think if he wasn't in Ukraine, I think he'd probably send some bombs over.
Yeah, interesting. The next one. This is a kind of bit more obscure. On Her Majesty's Secret Service. I'm going to talk about a particular case, which is Kevin Lister, and I think you probably know who he is.
Teacher.
He's a teacher, and he's a teacher who basically refused to call a boy in his class who said he was a woman, her, she, or whatever, and then so he was sacked. So this was quite a shocking case because then he went to an industrial tribunal, to the court to get this set aside, and he wasn't. He lost his case basically. So, but what interested me on this is that my understanding is the magistrates' court that he was tried in, and now 60% of magistrates' cases are now held in secret behind closed doors. So something that used to be available for the public to sit in most cases, now 60% of magistrates' cases are now tried behind closed doors, so the press can't attend, the public can't attend, decisions are made, and basically it means the magistrates are becoming almost autonomous in terms of their decision-making process. I just wondered if you were aware of this, and what does it signify in terms of trials, freedom and democracy as we go forward?
I wasn't aware of that. I was aware there is cases every now and again behind closed doors, but there should be good reasons for that. Yeah. I didn't realise it was like anywhere near 60%. Yes. I thought it'd been single figures.
Yeah, it's increased dramatically over the past few years.
Yeah, it's the wrong road to go down. Not only do we have to have justice and deliver justice, justice has to be seen to be done. And that is why we're losing trust in all our institutions, because we don't think they're on our side anymore. And for them to go behind closed doors to make decisions just makes me go, well, they're hiding something. The wrong way to go. I don't understand why they've done this. I don't understand why.
Well, I think the reason they did it was there was a big backlog of cases to be tried. So they introduced this closed door trial basically to try and expedite and speed up the process. But from something that was meant to be used a little bit on occasion, it's now, for expediency and convenience, escalated to 60% of magistrates' cases. But what that means is there's all sorts of cases being tried that we aren't aware of, where decisions are made and nobody has a right of redress at that point. That's what it means. And it's kind of, well, it's like the rest of the public sector now, isn't it? Everything, there is no right of reply, there is no right of appeal, because there's nothing to appeal to basically. And when the courts are doing that, that's even worse, isn't it? How do you possibly get your case heard or publicise your case in these situations? And it's crept up on us like a lot of things have crept up, and most people are not aware of this.
They're not, and I don't understand how it would speed things up by not having it open to the public. You may want the court case to be shorter in time. Well, there might be a reason for that, but that doesn't stop someone sitting in a public gallery to listen to that, or the press listening to it. It's the only way we avoid corruption is to have public scrutiny. And if no one turns up to witness the court case, well, at least the opportunity was there for someone to
Correct.
go.
Yeah.
But to have it behind closed doors stinks.
And I think the reason being is, if there is a public there or the press, if the magistrates are not seen to deliberate for a reasonable period of time or discuss it, there's a natural... if you're sitting as a magistrate and you can see the public sitting there and it's a complex case, you need to be seen to deliberate and think about it and go and, if you've ever been a magistrate, I have, over speeding fines. If you ever go there, they have to go away and deliberate, have a chat, ask a few questions or whatever. But in this case, they don't.
Yeah.
They can almost make the decision unilaterally. Yes, he was speeding. We'll give him £500,000 and give him points. But it's gone beyond speeding to other cases as well. And I think this Kevin Lister case was another example. He was trying to defend himself in this situation. I think there wasn't really a proper process followed, and he's ended up with his job, losing his job, and it being upheld basically.
And that's why we need people sat in the public gallery, because the people in the court, so the solicitors, the people who work for the courts, they do as they're told by the magistrate. The magistrate's extremely powerful. It's his court.
Yes.
You're in his or her court.
Yes.
You'll do as you're told.
Yeah.
So the magistrate has a lot of power, a lot of influence. We stop them abusing that by having those courts open to the public.
Correct.
So members of the public can make sure that judge isn't a tyrant.
Yeah.
That judge didn't let his personal feelings get in the way of making that judgment. That judge was making inappropriate remarks about this case. That's why we need people and given the opportunity to sit in the case.
Yeah.
To sit in the
and that's
court.
the essence of what a jury is about at the end of the day, isn't it? To allow the people to make a decision about these things. But again, we see in society this freedom, the involvement of the people being taken away. More and more things.
It goes back to experts know best.
Yes.
So the judge, as an expert, he knows better than you. He will tell you what's legal and what's lawful now. You'll just do as you're told. And it's that authoritarianism, but it's also that bureaucracy creeping into everything, as in, we know better than you.
Yes.
And we'll run roughshod over your rights.
Yeah.
Because we're better than you.
Yeah.
We know more than you.
Yes, it is that, isn't it? It's basically saying, these are the cognoscenti, these are the elites, the priests of our society, who will make decisions on your behalf or on your future without any kind of scrutiny or public checks being in place, any kind of checking. I agree. I was quite shocked when I read it. I didn't realise. I'll send you the article actually.
Yeah.
Moving on, Dr. Ian Fleming, James Bond, Dr. No.
Dr. No.
And this is an interesting one because I don't know if I've written statistics down here, I haven't, but the NHS, there was a survey done on the NHS.
The stats were, you sent them to me.
Did I? Yes.
5 years ago, the percentage of people who said they're not happy with the NHS was 24%. Today it's 75%.
Correct. No, in 2010, 70% of the people were satisfied with the NHS.
Right.
Now, only 24% of
Right.
people. So in 10 years, we've gone from 70% satisfaction with the NHS to 24%.
To 24.
And is it surprising?
No.
Is it surprising? The NHS is in chaos. The NHS is no longer a public service for the people anymore.
It hasn't been for decades. All that's happening now is it's about to collapse.
Yes.
So services been getting worse and worse and worse every decade of my life. And you can see it tilting and tilting and tilting, but it's still managing to, and it's tilting, and it looks like now it's going to, it can't cope anymore.
Yeah.
With immigration, with the fact it's now, we want the NHS to do everything for us. It was never built to do everything for us. New medicines have come along, new procedures come along. We expect it to do absolutely everything, and it can't be done. And an extra 10 million people in the country, it's a mess.
The waiting lists are now something like, is it 7 million or something ridiculous?
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Half my family work in the NHS.
Yeah.
It's the biggest employer in Europe, the
Yeah.
NHS. And the stories they tell me, from incompetence to mistakes to, they all hate working there. Not one of them of my family work in the NHS. God, you know what I really like working in the NHS? They don't. It's a mess. I don't know what the answer is, but the services are getting worse and worse and worse and worse.
So interestingly, Labour have actually, and I think this was last week, Labour have come out and said the NHS needs support from the private sector. I don't know if you saw that article.
No.
So what is strange is that Labour and you wouldn't are actually basically acknowledging that there's some private element needs bringing into the NHS, which is the complete opposite of what you would think.
What they mean by that is they're going to want the waiting list down. So what they mean by that is we'll palm off the waiting lists to private hospitals. We'll pay the private hospitals.
Oh, right, so it's just more money, throwing more money at it.
Yeah, that's exactly what they'll mean and exactly what they do.
Yeah.
And once we got the list down, it's back to normal, isn't it?
Yes.
They're wedded. All our political parties are wedded to the NHS.
Yeah.
And for any of them to change it, the NHS has to get a lot worse than it is today.
Yeah. So let's assume that by sheer chance on May the 3rd, you're not only elected Mayor of Greater Manchester, but you're also elected the Prime Minister by some mistake in the polling process and the wrong election. How would you fix the NHS, Mr. Buckley, mayoral candidate?
The first thing we need to do with the NHS is we need to have a national discussion about what we want out of the National Health Service, what we're willing to pay for, and how it works. Until we have that conversation with the people, it's unchangeable. So, I don't see why abortions are on the NHS. I don't know why breast implants are on the NHS. I don't know why test tube babies are on the NHS. And my granddaughter
IVF,
got IVF on the NHS and so I love it to bits, but we shouldn't be paying for that on the NHS. I had a friend who was a semi-professional footballer, and he was at the hospital about his knees and ankles usually twice a week, and he was being paid to play football, and the NHS were picking up his tab to fix him all the time. We should be doing that. There's many things the NHS is doing we shouldn't be doing. We need to get back to basics, which is emergencies. So A&E, you've been run over, anything like that, saving life there and then, that's part of the job. And then we need to look at what else we do. So is it cancer treatment? Is it that? Is it the other? How much money what do we do with people whose lifestyle is making them bankrupt the NHS? So what do we do with people with type 2 diabetes? So fatty. You're costing us a fortune because you won't stop eating. How much responsibilities does the NHS have on you now? What do we do with the someone who's into dangerous sports and constantly the NHS with ankles and knees, they're hurting themselves, and we go, no, you need to take private health insurance out. We're not going to treat you anymore because of your part-time adventures, climbing cliffs. So and my list will be different from people's up, but we need to get a consensus in the country what we want it to do, what we can afford, and what we're willing to pay for. Because without what we're willing to pay for, everybody will say, let it do everything, just give it more money. But giving it more money isn't the answer. And if it is the answer, how much more tax do you want to pay? And once you put it to people like that, people then go, oh, right, I've got to pay for it. Of course you've got to pay for it. How much are you willing to pay out of your money?
And is that the reason it works or seems to work in America? Because people are very aware of the fact they have to pay for an element of their...
The American health system is probably the worst in the world.
Really?
Apart from the third world. So the American health system is terrible unless you're rich. So we need to stop talking about the American health system, because that puts people off. Because if you're poor in America, there's lots of treatment you can't get. There's some horrendous things happen in America. So let's look at Scandinavia, Germany and France. They're more like us.
Okay.
They have better systems. They have a system where emergencies are dealt with by the state, but people buy insurance. The state can top up your insurance, but it's all done in partnership with the private sector. And just like all insurances, you'll pay less if you look after yourself. Just like if you get a small 1 litre car, you'll pay less car insurance than you would if you got a 4 litre sports car. So it makes people over time, it makes them select better choices and puts personal responsibility on them. We should never get to a stage where you can't get insurance because you're too fat, you're too ill. There needs to be some socialist idea there that we do help each other out, but we need to reward better lifestyles and better choices. Yeah. Our system doesn't work at all.
I think, yes, it is something to do with the private sector, but I'm kind of, as I think I am a socialist, so my ideas, if you're fat, I don't think you should be penalised for being fat. Human nature, the essence of society is it cares for society, doesn't it? All elements of society. If somebody's overweight for whatever reason, whether they can't, they may have a lower IQ, so they can't control themselves as much, I don't think they should be penalised for being overweight. It's like...
So if I don't want to work at all, you're happy paying my universal credit, are you?
If you don't want to work at all? No, I didn't say that.
No, but that's the equivalent.
No, because I think...
You're going to pay for me to make poor choices that I don't want to work and sort of benefits. You're quite happy paying for that.
But some people can't help putting on weight, Nick, as you and I both know.
No, it's all down to personal choice.
Right.
So we need to stop removing personal choice and personal responsibility from people going, oh, you're fat because you're stupid. Well, here's 4 other stupid people. They're all skinny. Yeah. So it's not that. It's about... It starts at childhood. Poor behaviours being taught by poor parents, making poor choices, never any consequences to making those poor choices, so they don't learn, they carry on making those poor choices. They then have children and teach them exactly the same.
But let's look at us two. I think it's fair to say, looking at us two, we're not at our fighting weights at the moment.
No, but we're both in our 50s.
Yes. Well, I'm slightly older, but yes, yes. Okay. Yes, so should you be penalised because you're in your 50s and you've not been maybe keeping yourself as slim and toned as you should have done?
I should pay more for health cover than a 19-year-old who's fit and plays football every weekend.
Why?
Because I'm more likely to be ill.
Yes, but that's not your fault, is it?
That's not my fault.
It's because you're of an age now. You've reached.
I'm more likely to use those services, so therefore, if I'm getting private insurance, of course there's going to be more of a premium on me.
Yes.
But if I knew that all my life, I may have made some better choices. There may be incentives for me at an annual checkup to go, Mr. Buckley, you're 16 stone, you've now gone to category 4 with this payment plan, but if you were down to 13 stone, Mr. Buckley, you would be on tier 1. Here's a good story for you. I set one of my first businesses up when I was late teens, early 20s, and I got a grant off the Prince's Trust and set up a business with it. And one of the perks was they had a deal with an insurance company, I can't remember the name of the insurance company now, and they gave me free life insurance every year until the year I didn't pass their test, their physical test. So for the first couple of years I passed the test. And it was a treadmill, it was listening to your heart, and it was all stuff like that. But it was free cover in case I died. So I took it. And the year I failed the test, I went to a private hospital, I'm on the running machine, I'm all wired up. And the nurse says to me, cheeky little maid she was, I'm in my mid-20s, and she goes to me, Mr. Buckley, we've got good news and bad news. I went, what's the bad news? She went, you failed your fitness test, so you won't be eligible for the free insurance anymore. I went, oh, what's the good news? Well, we've now realised who's at all the pies. I was like, talk about being fun. I mean, yeah. We were flirting a little bit, but so she was. But I thought, that's never left me that. So, incentives and telling people are doing things wrong will change behaviour. Not everybody, but over a society will start changing behaviours. Rewarding people for making poor choices only encourages people to make poor choices.
If they have the capability to understand they are making poor choices. Not everybody does. That's probably where you and I differ with our views.
No, I think you're being a little bit unfair to people. I think you're being a little bit condescending to people.
Maybe. Our next book, Diamonds Are Forever. Now, this is a story that I introduced, I think, 2 weeks ago, and you dismissed it out of hand. And now I'm starting to wonder, were you wrong, Nick, and was I right? And this relates to Kate Middleton, who I think I said to you, I believe she's a lizard, which she's not actually a human being because of certain things that were happening. There was doctored photographs, there was a video of her walking, and it clearly wasn't her, a picture in a car. And then, to cap it all, so people were maligning her online and things like that. And I didn't malign her, by the way, I just said I thought she might be a lizard. But to cap it all, she then came on television, on YouTube or something, with a prepared statement basically saying she's got or has had cancer, had cancer removed from her. Which I thought this is a remarkable thing, because the royal family never ever tell you when they're ill. Normally, you never find out or whatever. But we've had two very recent cases: King Charles and Prince Charles, I think of him, and now Kate Middleton, the Princess of Wales. But what was interesting is there was clearly this picture that had been doctored, and I think everybody's upset who's been doctored of her. Then the video itself, the skeptics or the conspiracy theorists were saying there's a problem with this video because the background doesn't move. I don't know if you've seen this or where the background isn't moving at all. And then there's a particular point where she lifts her hand up, and this is a Diamonds Are Forever comment. Her ring appears to disappear from her finger as she raises her hand or crosses her hand, and then reappears on her finger. So now the conspiracy theorists are saying this is AI, this is not a real... And apparently the outfit she's wearing is one that was seen 5 years ago or something like that, and the hairstyle's the same as it was 5 years ago as well. So we discussed this 2 weeks ago. We've now had further strange things happening around the royal family. Is something happening there that you and I, the uneducated public in our little cubby holes, is it being kept from us? Is something happening there with these people? Is there artificial intelligence? Are there doctored pictures? Are we actually seeing what we think we're seeing with the royal family?
I don't care. I really, really don't care. We should know if the king's ill. We should know why he's ill. So, but she's not the king. She's not in line for the throne. Her private medical record should remain private. The reason why I think she's released them is because people at the hospital were trying to tap into the computer to find out what she had, and they would have sold that to the newspapers. So she's been forced to come out to stop that happening, which is unfortunate, but those things happen. Disappearing rings, backgrounds not moving.
You need to do more research on that. I thought this would be coming up on your Twitter feed.
No, I mean I'm trying to look at important stories. Oh, I don't know. I don't care. I give it no thought whatsoever.
No, and I don't really care about the royal. No, it's an interesting point. I don't really care about the royal family either, but I do care about the fact that we might be being manipulated by certain people at certain levels in society. I think that is important. And like I said to you, it took me back 5 years. I wouldn't have given this a second thought or even believed it. 5 years on now, after seeing what I've seen over the last 5 years, I'm now starting to wonder whether these things are happening and have been happening for a long time, and we just have not been made aware, or we just are not aware of it, and it's just part of the overall general manipulation of the...
That's always gone. That's gone on for thousands of years. We're just getting better and better at it, so that's always gone on. Did you see the video? Did her ring disappear?
It does actually look as though her ring does disappear for a moment. Yes. You need to watch the video.
Right.
Maybe you can attach it to this episode.
Because if you're looking at anything like that, there is certain movements and certain things that you can point out that her arm shouldn't twist like that.
Yes.
And so you can get into the minutiae of certain stuff that's just proper conspiracy theory level. I don't know. After the election, I'm going to start paying more attention to the royal family and to these things.
Well, I'm sure...
If they're lizards, I want to know.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be writing a sycophantic letter like
Andy Burnham
did to the King, to Prince Charles,
Yeah.
which I don't know if you've told your listeners about yet, but it was horrific. I'm just moving on to my next book, Casino Royale, which was the first Ian Fleming book, and the first film starring David Niven, if you remember that.
Yeah.
So I read this message in the Telegraph, and I thought, have I travelled back in time? When did Diana die? I don't know if you... I know you're a big fan of the royal family.
You keep saying I'm a big fan of the royal family. I'm a monarchist. I'm not a big fan of the royal family. I don't know, what is it, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, something like that?
Yeah, probably. So the story is this. Princess of Wales, thrilled by messages of support, says the Queen. So I thought, what is going on here? Because the Princess of Wales...
Kate Middleton's now the Princess of Wales.
...is Diana, and the Queen was the Queen, I thought. But
the Queen is now Camilla, the Princess of Wales.
But she's not the Queen, Nick.
She is.
She was the Queen's Queen Consort.
And then that's what she was going to be called, and then they changed it, and now she's just Queen.
Yeah, but once again, they're trying to force us peasants to accept something that isn't the reality, that Camilla is not the Queen, and the Princess of Wales is forever in our hearts, and I know in your heart, Nick, Princess Diana. But it's almost like this seemed to work back then. The Queen was quite good. Diana was quite good for whatever reasons. I'm not a fan of Diana, by the way.
The wife.
So we'll just shoehorn these new characters into these roles and hope the unsuspecting public, the monarchists like you, Nick, who are easily fooled by this stuff, will swallow it whole, basically. But that headline should not exist in my mind, because the Princess of Wales being thrilled by message of support from the Queen is Diana being, supported
these are titles that have been inherited by different people. So there's been dozens of Princess of Wales, dozens of them.
Yes.
Because they're always married to the Prince of Wales, who ends up being king.
Yes.
We've had lots of queens in this country, lots of them.
Yes, but that's when the Queen is the absolute monarch, not the partner of the absolute monarch. For example, Queen Victoria was married to Prince Albert, not King Albert.
The word, from my understanding, when it's the husband, we tend not to call them king because we think king is the ruler. But when you have a king, his wife is always called the queen, because it's automatic. She's the consort. She's not the queen, as in what we'd imagine the bloodline of the queen. So these are just not...
I think you're wrong, and I'd like our gentle listeners to actually put us right on this one, because I think she should have been the queen consort and remain at that title. She's not our beloved queen. That was the queen.
Before this, every queen of the King of England has been called queen.
Okay, I'll do my research. But I'm sure our listeners can write in and let us know.
Tell us in the comments.
I ran out of titles here, so I've just put Sean Connery, who was the definitive Bond in my view, and this is just a reference to Scotland, really. What would Sean Connery think of the new hate laws that have taken place in Scotland? They've actually been enshrined in legislation for a while now, but they took effect in the last...
First of April.
Yeah. So, could you first, for our gentle listeners, explain how these hate laws work? And then secondly, give us your view on what Sean Connery would think about them if he were alive today. God bless him.
He's alive.
Sean Connery now.
He died?
Yeah, he died. Oh, sorry, that's a real shock to you. Sean Connery died about 2 years ago, I think. Oh my God, we might have to bring this podcast to an extreme end.
I think we have to Google that. I don't remember Sean Connery dying.
There's tears streaming down Nick's face as we speak. Listeners,
I'm a chump, man. I might be wrong. My phone's still but no.
Do you want me to
quickly Google it?
Right, you just talk while I'm Googling, and then we'll see.
Right, Sean Connery. Well, first of all, the hate crime law.
Could you just give us a brief
so
description of what the hate laws are?
So we've got hate crime in the UK anyway, hate crime laws in the UK.
Yes.
Quite weak compared to some places, but they're still there. So Scotland now, because Scotland has a different law to England and Wales.
Correct.
They have Scottish law, and they've got a parliament which can create their own laws if it's for Scotland only, and they've come up with new legislation on hate crime, and it goes much further. So
can I just
from the smile on your face, I know you know your.
Can I just interrupt?
Yeah.
So he was born in Edinburgh
on
the 25th of August 1930, and he died on the 31st of October 2020, 4 years ago.
Right.
Nearly 4 years ago.
I don't remember him dying.
He died in Lyford Cay. I don't even know where Lyford Cay is. So
he lives in America.
Is it? Yeah. So he never went back. He never went back to Scotland.
Yeah.
Don't blame him.
Yeah. But I'll get onto this. I'll get onto that in a minute, because that's something I'm going to talk about Sean Connery. So the new hate crime laws now in Scotland have gone so much further. So in Scotland now, if me and you having this conversation in my office, in a private residency, not on Zoom, let's say it's not on Zoom, and I say something to you, and you go home and tell your wife, and your wife tells her hairdresser, who then upsets her, or she thinks it's wrong, she can phone the police and report me for a hate crime, and that's legitimate. So second, third, fourth hand reporting from somebody who wasn't there, who didn't hear it, and it doesn't even affect them, if they think you said it because of hate, you've now broken a law and can be arrested.
So if I said to you, India Willoughby, who's a very famous trans bloke, basically, if I said to you, India Willoughby's a man, Nick, in my opinion, and you probably agree with me, then you go and tell your hairdresser, and your hairdresser's offended, and you say to your hairdresser, I was chatting with Inzi the other day, and he said India Willoughby's a bloke, basically, as is Caitlyn Jenner. She could then be so offended by that, she could contact the police, and I could be arrested. Yeah.
Not even if she's offended.
Cannot be right, that.
Not even if she's offended. Only if she thinks you're wrong and you said it because you had hate in your heart, and how she'd ever know that, I don't know.
Yeah.
Then she can report you and you can be arrested.
And
private conversation in a private house.
So forgive me for saying this. That to me sounds horrifically, grotesquely, obscenely wrong.
Can you see that being abused by anybody?
Yes.
Yes.
Much like the assisted dying being abused. So if you have a grudge against somebody and you hear them say one thing that's inappropriate, you potentially could report them to the police.
Yeah. And the First Minister is saying things like, it'll never be used like that, it'll get thrown out of court. But we need to understand, it's the accusation, the being arrested, which is the punishment. It may get thrown out of court.
But it's on your record.
But it's on your record, you've been arrested for it. It's the process, those 8 months of waiting. It's the punishment. You'll make sure then you say nothing ever again.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be arrested again and have 8 more months of this. Funding the court case, going... People will just keep their mouths shut. It's a way of silencing people.
It's horrific. I'd just like to say for the record that trans women are men. I'd like this video to be played in Scotland, and I'd like somebody to come and try and arrest me in England.
I'd like to go one step further.
Okay.
Trans women are mentally ill men.
Yeah, but I think when I said it, I had hate in my heart. I don't think you had hate in your heart.
No, because I want them to get services from the NHS. That's what we pay the NHS for. These are mentally ill men who need help and support to live a truthful life. If they want to dress women, but we need to make them understand they're living in delusion. You're not a woman.
Yes. But I think, Nick, you're saying that with love in your heart.
Yes.
So I don't think... I'm not going to report you.
Thank you. Thank you. But Sean Connery.
Sean Connery, yes.
So Sean Connery was a member of the SNP.
He was.
He was a socialist. But like many socialists, he was a multi-millionaire socialist who lives in a mansion with a private jet and left Scotland as soon as he could and never went back. So, you know, he's a real strong member of the SNP. He wanted Scottish independence and made it known during the referendum. He wanted Scotland to become independent, even though he didn't live there.
Yeah.
He was a hypocrite.
Yes.
But when it comes to this, he was a hypocrite. And
so you think he would have voted for this? I think he would. I think you're right, you know. I think that the horrific thing about that is, despite our Bond theme and us believing Bond to be a misogynistic, devil-may-care, free speech absolutist, Sean Connery probably would have supported this.
Probably, and also, he would have supported it for many reasons. The first reason is because he's an SNP supporter. He would have supported it again because he's a socialist and he's pink and fluffy and that's all hugging. He also would have supported it because he spent his whole career in Hollywood, which is very left-wing, and he would have supported it because he had a reputation of playing Bond, who was misogynist. So he would also support it to cleanse his soul of the characters he played.
In fact, I'm surprised towards the end of his life he didn't go on TV and say, I apologise for playing the misogynistic, woman-hating role of James Bond.
Well, he didn't have to because he'd already been punished by then. Do you know that he could have been the highest paid actor in the world of all time?
No, I didn't.
And he turned it down. He was offered the role of Gandalf in Lord of the Rings.
Oh, was he?
And they said to him...
Which Ian
McKellen.
Ian McKellen ended up playing,
And because they wanted him, he was their choice, number one choice, because they desperately wanted him. They offered him 4% of the profits of the film.
You're joking.
But no one knew how big the film was going to be. And they've worked out 4% of the profits is over £500 million.
Oh my God. So why did he turn it down? I didn't realise you knew so much about Sean Connery.
Because it was 3 films over 2 years. He said it's far too long. I don't want to be committed for a 2-year project, and turned it down.
When he went to audition for the role of James Bond, he was interviewed by Cubby Broccoli and Barbara Broccoli, who were the producers of the James Bond film, and they interviewed him, and then they decided they didn't want to employ him, and then as he left the audition, and it was at Shepperton Studios or something, and he was walking away down, and Barbara Broccoli went to the window and she saw him walking away, and she said, he walks like a panther. And when she saw him walking like that, that's when she decided he'd be James Bond.
Wow.
He wasn't going to get the role from the audition when she saw him walking outside, because he was very kind of athletic and muscular. So he walks like a panther, and that's why they took him on. Did you know that story?
I didn't.
You can add it to
your
Sean Connery trivia. Just while there's a few other things which are not Bond related, but whilst we're talking about the hate laws in Scotland, a woman I know you're not that keen on, but I think is fantastic, J.K. Rowling, has come out again on this and has said, specifically made comments about trans blokes and said, I dare you to arrest me. And she's actually said, I'm out of the country at the moment, but I'm saying these things. I'm coming back on such a time. I'm happy to be arrested at the airport if this is what free speech is about in my adopted country. So what do you think about? Because I know you've got some not negative opinions about J.K. Rowling, but you maybe don't. I think she's
spot on with the trans stuff.
Yes.
But she's a feminist, and part of her hates men. So she wasn't. She's not. She's some of the things she said previously before she got involved in trans things about men and stuff like that. She has something against men. But on the trans stuff, she's spot on. The fact she said these things out of the country is very clever, because that'll be thrown out of court because you've not committed an offence in Scotland.
Yeah, but do you think that's the reason she's doing it out of the country? I think she just happened to be out of the country.
She may have happened to be out of the country, but she's not a stupid woman. She's got great lawyers.
She's a very clever woman.
Yeah, so she's dared them, but she also knows in her back pocket, I didn't commit any offence in Scotland.
Yeah.
I was in Taiwan where she's at the time.
I think maybe she wants to be arrested. I think maybe she wants to be arrested because I think the publicity around that would be unbelievable in terms of publicising. Because she's not, I mean, if you follow J.K. Rowling and the trans thing, initially she was very kind of, she handled it gingerly. She was kind of very, I love trans people, I've got nothing against them. Now she's far more overt about trans women are not men.
That's because they're constantly attacking her. She has to fight back.
And on the latest, by the way, I'm not on Twitter, but my wife's on Twitter, so sometimes I'll see Anna's tweets. Her latest tweets, she's actually put a series of trans blokes who put wigs on and then molest or rape women. A series of them there saying, "Is this an example of what Is this an example of whatever?" So she's become far more, because of course her Twitter account, the main people who used to look at it were young kids who read the Harry Potter stuff. Now a lot of it is she's overtly saying, this is wrong, the trans thing, and she's got bolder. In this time she's gone really bold because she's saying, arrest me if you dare. This is what trans women are not men, basically. And I'm really impressed. I know she's got the best lawyers in the world. She's got money to throw at or whatever, but it's a very bold thing for her to do.
Yeah, I mean she's brave because she doesn't need the fight.
Correct.
She's a multi-millionaire.
Yeah.
I think she used to be a billionaire. She gave so much money away. She's not a billionaire, but she doesn't need the hassle.
Yeah.
But she's jumped into this fight because she thinks it's the right fight time. So for that, I take my hat off. And I think she is provoking the authorities to say, I dare you to arrest me.
Yeah.
Because at least she knows she's got the finances to fight back.
Yes.
A lot of people haven't got the finances to fight back on this. And she's probably thinking, if they arrest me and I beat it, I've set precedence here that we can beat this. Yeah. I also think she's done it out of the country because that'd be part of her defence.
Yes.
As in, well, I didn't commit a crime in Scotland. I wasn't in Scotland.
Yeah.
And you say I committed a crime. So, you can't stab somebody in Japan and then be arrested in the UK or Scotland for stabbing someone in Japan. You only get arrested if there's a warrant for you in Japan to then be sent back to Japan.
If it's an extradition treaty between the two.
Well, you're not arrested here for stabbing someone. You're arrested because there's a warrant for your arrest and your extradition. So she understands that.
Maybe.
But I hope they do arrest her. I hope they do, because that's what looks like she wants. And it'll only take someone like her to kill this law. It only takes it to get into court with someone with the money to get the best barristers to show the court and the public how stupid this whole thing is.
Yeah.
She could bring down the SNP government. She could do all sorts.
I think she could. And isn't that the exact opposite of your hero, Sean Connery? Sean Connery lives in Hollywood, rich man lives in Hollywood, throws back comments into Scotland telling Scottish people how to live and what to do, whereas J.K. Rowling lives in Scotland, pays her taxes, and is attacking the Scottish government from within Scotland.
Exactly.
That's a big difference between those two.
Sean Connery is a typical expat.
Yes.
As in, I don't want to live in this country anymore. I want to live somewhere better, but I want to romanticise my old country.
Yes.
I want to have connections there. We've talked about before about people with Pakistani heritage here, or Indian heritage, or Caribbean heritage. It's like, well, no, this is your country now.
Yes.
Stop harking on about this wonderful country that wasn't good enough for you to live in.
Yes.
And that's exactly what he's doing to a certain extent when he was alive. Harking back to this mystery of Scotland, the brave, and but I don't want to live there.
Yeah. Well, I know how much you love Liverpool.
You know a lot about me today, don't you? I love the monarchy. I love Sean Connery. I love, a lot about me.
I know how your heart, like Andy Burnham's, lies in Liverpool. But two examples of that. I find the term Scouser quite pejorative, quite insulting, but people seem to think it's a normal thing to call them. Is that Correct.
It's like calling us Mancunians.
Yeah. Do you think so? Scouser sounds a little harsher to me. I always thought it was. Anyway.
Yeah.
So two of my favourite Scousers, Cilla Black and Paul McCartney, have never gone back to Liverpool, but they wax lyrical about Liverpool.
Yeah.
Or they did. Cilla Black's dead, by the way, in case you didn't know. I can confirm it on Twitter, on the internet.
And Paul McCartney.
Paul McCartney's not dead.
He is.
Is he?
No.
There have been rumours he's been dead ever since the Abbey Road album.
No.
Have you not heard that story?
No.
It's something to do with the way, because he hasn't got his shoes on when they're crossing the... So they said that's a symbol that he's dead.
He's dead, right.
So he actually died probably based on that 40 years ago. Yeah. Yes, they always wax lyrical about Liverpool, it's fantastic or whatever. Would never set foot in it again, would they, basically? So that's another example of the I can't remember what to say.
And I'm sure there's people, I'm sure the Oasis brothers are exactly the same.
Yes.
Living in LA.
They live in London. No, they live in London, don't they?
Live in London.
Yeah.
Always going about Manchester. Our kid, I don't live there anymore, though.
Yeah. Correct. So, other stuff. So I'm moving on from... Oh, sorry, yes, before I start that, you just said something then that rang a bell about Asians going on about how fantastic it is in Pakistan whilst living, enjoying the life in the UK. I was looking at one of the excerpts, and I can't remember what it may have been the George Galloway one. There were lots of comments on that one.
Yeah.
But two of the comments specifically said, typical, two fat white blokes.
Yeah, I saw them.
And
now I'm saying two, there's only one.
Yes.
Only one fat one.
Can I just say, for our gentle listeners, I am not white. I am Anglo-Indian. I'm half Indian.
His name's Khan.
My name is Khan. I didn't mention my name at the beginning. My name is Khan. I'm half Indian. Somebody mentioned that we don't understand racism. I understand racism. I suffered racism as a child at school. I went to school in Whitby. I was the only brown kid in an entire white. So I know all about racism. I've been all the way through it. So please don't lecture me on racism and being a white bloke, because I'm not.
But we are fat.
But yes. You were right on that one. Yeah. So talking about white people, there's an article in the Telegraph, which I think I sent you, The Grim Future Awaiting British Boys. And basically it was saying that young white British boys now are failing in almost every category of success in school, further education, careers now, and nobody's talking about it. Yeah,
been going on for decades. Getting worse, but it's been going on decades. You're more likely to commit suicide as a white man than you are a black man or an Asian man. So suicide is also more prevalent as well. And this goes back to so many things. It goes back to us as a nation denigrating our own culture, always raising somebody else up above our culture. We've just celebrated Ramadan in the country. No one celebrated Easter. London had Ramadan lights everywhere. And it's this constant feeling of being attacked on all the time. So, white working class lads do worse in school. So black lads do better than white working class lads. They do worse at university, less likely to go to university, more likely to get poor grades, more likely to be unemployed. You can just go through the list, and it's because there's several things. The first thing is there's nothing honourable anymore about being a white man anymore now. There's nothing special about it. You're not looked, if anything, it's not about being looked up to, it's the opposite.
You're not given any respect.
You're given no respect because you're a white man, you're the oppressor. What do you mean I'm the oppressor? I live in a failing council estate in the middle of nowhere. None of my family work, none of my granddad did work, my dad doesn't work, I've got no qualifications, I can't read, I can't write. And you're telling me as a black, university educated guy working in a bank who's got £500,000 a year, you're telling me I'm privileged because you think the police might stop you in a car more than me. I can't even afford it. The only car I'm going to get, so I'm going to nick it. And so we've got that dichotomy of understanding that. it's as if everything's been taken away.
Well, we before you continue, we referred to the Three Body Problem program before, that program I was watching. Again, as a young white man watching that program, what are the messages you're getting there?
Yeah.
Because these are scientists in this, a lot of scientists. So the best detectives are Chinese, the best scientists are black, Chinese or Indian. If you're a white person, you might get cancer. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's no redeeming messages for white people.
But that's constant.
I know it's ongoing. And then another thing I meant to mention as well, just a reminder for our listeners, I am not white. Okay, so a reminder for I was watching like football. So I was watching this weekend Man City versus Arsenal, a pivotal match, as you'll know, Nick, in the Premiership. Because they're both vying for the top spot. Yeah. It ended as a draw, you'll be pleased to know. But I missed the first half, and then I couldn't get my Sky Q box working and all that jazz. So by the time I managed to switch it on, it was just going into the adverts at half time, basically. And I watched the adverts because I thought, because I didn't know where I was, so I didn't know if it was the beginning of the adverts or the end of it. So I thought, it's going to come back on in a minute, so I'll watch it. And on every single advert, there was not a single white person. And I thought, you know something? If I'd have landed on a spaceship and turned on the television here, and I'm sitting in Manchester, I would think I was in an African country, basically, because every advert, all the protagonists were black people. And I thought I'm going to watch this all the way through, and I did, and every advert was a black, but there were somewhere there were one or two white people, lots of Chinese, whatever, but I think pretty much every advert was mainly black people. And again, it's constant, the messaging all the way through. So I know lots of young white men watch football in this country, a lot of young white men, they're watching those adverts as I am. And what are they thinking?
They're watching footballers take the knee to Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
And they go, well, doesn't my life matter? Doesn't my life matter?
Yeah.
It starts from birth. So I watched a lot of Peppa Pig because of my granddaughter.
Yeah.
The male father in Peppa Pig is stupid. So when children are watching their favourite cartoon, all the women are fantastic.
Yeah.
All the female characters are fantastic. The male Peppa Pig, the dad, is stupid. Let's look at other cartoons. Let's look at Bart Simpson.
Yeah.
His dad's the idiot.
Yes, he is.
Then let's look at there's other cartoons out there. Family Guy.
Yeah.
The dad again, the white guy, is the idiot.
It's true. Yeah.
And then so children are being brought up on this. White people are the idiots. Males are the idiots. If you're white and you're a girl, well, you're a bit special. You've got some intelligence.
Yeah, that's true actually.
Yeah. And then you start getting into adulthood. Then you start looking at all the films. White people are being portrayed now as either invisible or they're not the heroes anymore now. And I can understand to a certain extent. I've watched many films where the black people are the heroes, and it's like, if it's a good actor like Denzel Washington, it makes no difference because they're great at what they do. But it's just everything. All the TV's thrown in your face, the advertisements are thrown in your face. You've been through school. If you're a girl, if you're gay, if you're black or Asian, you seem to get extra support because there's more projects working in those schools because they're trying to help those minorities. But you're there going, I'm not a minority, but I'm struggling. No help and support for you. When I've had homeless projects in the city centre, the people it was hardest to help were white men.
Really?
If you were gay, I could get you a bed that night because there's projects for that. If you're Asian, I could get you a bed. If you're black, if you're disabled, but if you're a straight white man, you're on the bottom of the list now, man.
Really?
It'll take us ages to get you help.
Really?
So everything seems to be stacked against you. You're then watching your football teams take a knee to Black Lives Matter, and you're there going, my life's crap. Why won't anyone take a knee to me?
Yeah.
You're being told all the time, you're racist, you're homophobic, you're racist. You persecuted my family. You went around the world raping and pillaging and killing, and that's far from the truth. We were, the British Empire was the most, what's the word for?
Benevolent.
Yes. empire ever to exist. Of course things went wrong and we did some bad things, but we did some amazing things. We industrialised parts of the world. That's why many countries I've been to, such as Egypt and India and all that, they hark back to the British Empire because, like, well, yeah, it was a lot better then. But you're getting this message all the time. And you wonder why suicide rates are up. You wonder why white working class men can't get jobs. There's no open support for them because they're not minorities, so we don't help you. Suicide rates are just a good example of that. And there's nothing in this country now where you can take pride in. And if you've lost pride of who you are and where you live, life's awful. You can handle being poor. You can handle having a hard life because most of life throughout the history of the world has been hard and dangerous. But you can handle that if you've got some pride, if you know what you're doing it for, if you value family. But we've even broken up the white working class families.
Correct.
Put them on benefits, single mums. It's as if it's been a concerted effort to destroy white working class men. It's working.
Yeah, because they're being told constantly they're shit, aren't they? They're being told you're shit, you're toxic, you're a toxic male, you need to be more like a woman.
Yeah.
I mean, I've just finished reading Errol Flynn's autobiography. Errol Flynn was, for our readers, a lot of people don't know who he is, but he was a very famous actor in the 1930s and 40s, born in Tasmania, Australia, mistakenly thought to be Irish when he arrived in Hollywood, very famous, and I can only describe if you read his autobiography, which is called My Wicked, Wicked Ways. He led a hell of a life. But the life, when I read it, I find it admirable because he led the life of a man. He led the life of a man, an adventurer. He was bold, he travelled, he did also, before he became an actor, he did all sorts of things and lived as a man. And he loved women, he had lots of affairs, was faithful to multiple wives or whatever. But when I read that, I find that, if I say to you now, I find that a really good story, he's a really interesting character, I am castigated by people for saying that because they say what a terrible man he was. You know, he was an adulterer. He was treating animals badly. He did this or whatever. But the traits and behaviours he exhibit are those what I regard male traits, the way men behave by their very nature. And I find that admirable now. As a young white man now, you tell those traits are not admirable, they're reprehensible, and one should not behave in those ways. But I don't agree with that.
Yeah, and who did they look up to?
Who did he look up to?
The white working class men. Who are they looking up to?
Sorry, who did they look up to?
Who are they finding as a role model?
Well, at the moment they have very few of them. I would say Jordan Peterson is one of them.
Yeah.
I would say the guy who lives in Czechoslovakia, Andrew Tate, is another one. But there's not many. No. They don't have many people to look up to.
And those people you mentioned, as well as Tommy Robinson, are all being attacked themselves constantly.
Yeah. You're not allowed to look up to, even in fiction now, strong male role models, are you? And you know, I think, just going back to your point, we started talking about the grim future awaiting British boys. You made a very good point about Christianity, and you and I have talked about Christianity before. I keep telling you I am a Christian, even though I don't particularly believe in God. But this Easter's just happened, finished, and at a Cadbury's store somewhere in the UK, and I don't know the detail, maybe you know these things, they didn't call them Easter eggs, they called them gesture eggs. Yeah. And they call them gesture eggs because the gesture is to buy one and give it to somebody as a present. Yeah. But what it's basically saying, Easter doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. And in fact, they didn't show an Easter service on the BBC, I understand. Not that I watch the BBC anymore. They didn't even bother showing an Easter service on the BBC. But we had to celebrate Ramadan all round the bloody country, including excessively in London, as I understand it.
Asda was selling halal Easter eggs.
Were they?
Yeah. And
can there be such a thing as a halal Easter egg?
Yeah, but to do with the fat that goes in making the chocolate. Yeah.
Okay.
And one store, they took the crosses off the hot cross buns and put something else on, like the picture of a rabbit, because so again, this all comes back to Christianity, comes back to our culture. They're trying to erase who they are, is a big discussion, but they're trying to erase our culture. So Easter now is problematic. So we don't have Easter eggs because it's a Christian thing. We're going to call them gesture eggs. And then maybe more people will buy them. The Hindus and the Jews and the Muslims will buy them as well because it's not a Christian thing. But that's not the point. It was a celebration of a religion. Same with hot cross buns. There's a history to why we have hot cross buns. I can't remember it now. But obviously we know what the cross is for. But we take the cross off now. So now they're just buns we're going to sell at Easter. It's just another way of destroying our culture, our history, our traditions, and making us beige so other people can imprint their cultures on us easier. And it needs to stop. It needs to stop, because if we're trying to be nice to immigrants and other people with different cultures, because they come here, we want to be polite because we're polite people, that's fair enough. But we need to understand they came here for a reason. They left their place for a reason because it wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
So if we're going to change our country to be more like their country, well, that doesn't work, because they didn't want their country because it wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
There's a reason why we're an amazing place to live, but we're destroying it.
It is being destroyed.
Sometimes I think this is all a psyops operation from somewhere like China. China played a long game. I think all this has been funded probably by our enemies to weaken the West, weaken the UK, and ready for a world war. Because if you're a white working class man at the moment and World War III...
You've got nothing to fight for.
Why would you risk
Why would you
your
fight for your country? Yeah.
Your country hates you.
No,
People hate you.
I think that's a really interesting point, because I asked my sons this. I said, would you fight for you? Because I said I would.
Yeah.
I will always fight. You know, if I'm getting a bit old now, but I still have a go. If I was asked to fight for England against a foreign threat, I would.
I would.
But when I asked my sons, 3 sons
Yeah.
I've got, 2 of them said no, they wouldn't.
Yeah.
And I was quite shocked, because they've been brought up in culturally with me. But I think part of the reason you're right is they're not seeing a community. They're not seeing something that they belong to in this country anymore. So they're saying, why should I have loyalty to this country?
Yeah.
It doesn't have loyalty. And white working class guys are the same. Why should I have loyalty to this country? It has no loyalty to me.
Yeah.
It doesn't care about me. It doesn't protect me. And that's again why Trump appeals to so many people in America, because he's saying, I want to look after you guys, and America is great.
Yeah.
And the people in America are great, and I'm going to protect you and look after you. And it's a very compelling message. Again, I go back to the point, why isn't that message being pushed hard by somebody in this country? I don't get it. That's very interesting what you said about the PSYOPs thing. I never thought about that, but you may be right there. Despite the fact you don't believe Princess of Wales is a lizard, you do believe there's a PSYOPs. So your conspiracy theories, you do have conspiracy theories, but they're only in certain areas, clearly.
You don't call something that there's evidence for conspiracy theory. So there's evidence of the pro-Palestine marches all being funded by Iran. And we know that to be true.
Is there actually evidence for that?
Yeah, there's evidence for that. There's Iranian spies on the marches. We know China has infiltrated all our organisations. We've had Chinese spies working for MPs. We know there's a war coming with China. Russia's not a problem. Russia can't even beat the Ukraine.
No, Russia's not got much. It's a tiny country now, Russia.
Yeah. So Russia's not a threat. If we treated Russia better over the last 30 years, Russia would be on our side now.
Yeah.
And wouldn't be a threat.
Well, they were in both the world wars, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the Cold War sort of ruined that.
Yeah.
But the UK's been fighting Russia for hundreds of years. But if we treated Russia better, they'd be on our side, because they don't like China either. But China is the world threat for us, and they're slowly destroying us, weakening us, ready for their takeover, for the world of China, because that's going to be the next big power. It's not all going to be plain sailing for China, because lots of things are going wrong in their country. Their country is bigger than Europe. We've seen Europe have lots of fights in different areas. There's areas in China hate each other, used to have wars. And the more money they get, the more they're going to want freedom. So it's not going to be easy sailing for China. But they're destroying the West. Our young people now won't even fight for the country. That's a great start.
But I think the Russians will fight for their country. It's interesting what you're saying about China being, lots of sort of into Nicene warfare or whatever. Germany was the same before the First World War. It was a group of disparate,
yeah,
and it came together to be Germany, and then Germany went on to then start 2 world wars.
Yeah.
So it might be interesting to see that China's going the same way. But I think at the moment, I know Xi Jinping is under pressure because the economy is not doing well in China.
Yeah.
So that may be something that might help him regain popularity. I don't know. It's an interesting point. The final point here, and I don't know, I think I haven't actually seen this, but I've seen it comes up on my YouTube feed, so I guess I must be looking at these things. And it's a film of an English bloke in a factory or something.
I've seen it, yeah.
So, can you tell our listeners what happened in this video and what you think about what happened?
So I didn't take offence at this.
Okay.
So it looked like a factory, it looked like the canteen. There's a white guy with a Tupperware bowl eating his lunch, and there's a guy with a camera. You don't see the guy with the camera, and he walks in filming, and he says to the guy, "What are you eating? We're all what's the word I'm looking for? We don't eat. Fasting, 'cause it's Ramadan, and you shouldn't be eating it." And it felt to me like a little bit of banter. But we're at a stage now, which is dangerous, where we're looking at everything through the prism of identity politics. So people are looking at going, how dare he say that to somebody that they're fasting, having a go at an English person eating. That, to me, seemed like two guys working in the factory.
Just having a laugh.
Having a laugh and having a bit of banter.
So it wasn't done, I've not seen the clip, so it wasn't done with vitriol or...
I didn't take any of that away from it at all. It's exactly what a work canteen should be like, taking the mickey out of each other and having a laugh and a joke.
Yeah.
Two different people from two different religions, absolutely fine with that.
Yeah.
But we're all becoming oversensitive.
Hypersensitised to everything,
and if we're not careful, it's not if we're not careful, if the government doesn't get a grip over the next couple of years, I foresee violence. I foresee extreme violence on the streets. And that's what we're heading to if we're not careful, because everybody is being polarised, everyone is retreating into their identity group, and we're looking at everybody else now as the enemy.
The problem, of course, with shoving people into their identity groups, including young white British males, is that the young white British or the white British male group is a big one. Yep. So if you shove everybody into that group, tell them they're crap or whatever, all it takes is one person to come along to polarise and activate that group, because it's already in its compartment, isn't it?
Yeah.
We'll shove you all in there because you're all shit. Yeah. We'll tell you you're shit, racist, sexist, whatever. We'll put you in there, tell you you're crap. Once you know you're in there, all it takes is one person to come along to identify to those people that they're a group, and they're a big and powerful group as well.
There's people out there already trying to do it.
Yeah.
What we're missing at the moment is the catalyst.
Yeah.
If the Manchester Arena bombing happened today, it'll be a different situation altogether.
Really?
The people who are speaking to me, the people who have spoken to me, the messages I get, and obviously I'm trying to be sensible and tone down the rhetoric and tell them you shouldn't be thinking like that, because I don't want violence.
What are they saying, Nick? Obviously no names, no pack drill.
If I had to summarise what they're saying, I'm hearing people saying that they need to start patrolling their areas with weapons. They need to close down the mosques, and we're going to close down those mosques. If anything happens, we're going to take justice in our hands now, because there's a two-tier policing system now. We're not going to get justice, and that's the feeling at the moment out there.
That's interesting.
And we know if that's the feeling, innocent people will get hurt.
Yeah.
And we're waiting for a catalyst. I don't know what that catalyst is going to be, but something will happen.
You can never predict.
No,
these
you
things.
can't. But something's going to happen, and then the first domino goes down, and we don't know. But it can all be avoided. But we need strong leadership. We've probably got 5 years to find some sort of strong leader who will offer white working class men a way out of this and build up if we don't build up their self-respect and their worth, they will build it up themselves through violence, because we're animals, and males will take gratitude and will take rising in their social status through violence, because then you're in a pecking order. You were unemployed for 9 years and you're a crap dad and you're this, but I've watched you fight Jesus, you're rock hard, I'm going to pay you some respect now. So you can get respect from your peers and from your community through violence if you're good at it. And the white working class are good at violence when they want to be. And the more organised and ethnic minorities, and we conquered the world with white working class men.
Correct.
So just because you think they're useless, you know, and we're 80% of the population, there's no minority in this country who can resist the 80% when it turns violent. And so I keep saying to ethnic minorities, you're going to have to help with this, because you're going to be the biggest loser when the violence comes. You need to start doing more as well.
And you think all that takes is a strong leader?
It takes more than a strong leader, but we need a strong leader to begin with.
We need a strong leader to begin with.
Yeah, it takes a lot. It's not going to be easy to fix. It's been going on for decades and decades and decades.
So, talking about strong leaders, if you want a strong leader of Greater Manchester, you want a strong mayor, please vote for Nick Buckley, MBE, on the
2nd of May.
2nd of May.
Cheers.
If you like that video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell and comment. And if you like what I'm saying about running for Mayor of Greater Manchester, then stick around, tell your family, tell your friends. The only way I'm going to have a chance of winning is a grassroots movement. So be part of that movement and hit that bell. Thanks.